Nvidia today was down nearly 3% after the world expects Google's TPUs to end Nvidia's GPU dominance. Now, in today's episode, I want to take a closer look at what Nvidia actually responded to these threats and some other things that I think investors should know before there's too much fear, uncertainty, and doubt for Nvidia. So let's take a closer look in today's episode. All right. So before we start off, I just want to take a closer look at this. Right now, we can see forward PE ratio for NVIDIA for the next 12 months is right now sitting at 25.62. This is nearly 20% cheaper than its median. The median since 2016, so almost a decade, has been 33.11. Now, I think this is crazy as this is a company that's beating expectations, that's raising guidance, that's producing massive amount of free cash flow, that's producing massive amounts of investments in the overall AI ecosystem, and to be sitting as one of the cheapest, yes, cheapest. Here I have a post where we see in looking at forward PE ratio, NVIDIA right now is the second cheapest Mag 7 in the market right now. The only cheapest is Meta. Now I'm going to do another video on this later this week, maybe tomorrow, to kind of cover some of my favorite Mag 7s at the moment. But I just wanted to give you a quick tease on that. Now we can see total cash and cash equivalents, roughly $60 billion in the most recent quarter. Free cash flow for 2012 months is 77 billion. Share-based compensation expenses is only $6 billion in 2012 months, and over $44 billion of repurchase of common shares in the last 12 months. Now, the final thing is this is a massive grower. Most recent earnings for the market that seems to have forgotten, they grew 62% year over year. And I believe we're going to continue to see some strong double-digit growth rates for the near future. Now, I know what you're thinking. Jose, where do we get amazing charts like this? Well, you get these at fiscal.ai/Jose. Right now, they are running their Black Friday sale. This is a platform that, let me be honest, they barely give any sales. So right now, 30% off if you use my coupon fiscal.ai/Jose. I use this platform on a daily basis and would recommend it to anybody that is curious about long-term investment, having data. They share transcripts. They have so much more. So if you're serious about the market, make sure to check out fiscal.ai/Jose. So now that we looked at some cool charts, I want to take a closer look at what NVIDIA responded to the overall market. They said, we're delighted by Google's success. They made great advances in AI, and we continue to supply to Google. NVIDIA is a generation ahead of the industry. It's the only platform that runs every AI model and does it everywhere computing is done. NVIDIA offers greater performance, versatility, and fungibility than ASICs, which are designed for specific AI frameworks or functions. Now, the market is not liking this at all. Well, it depends on who you ask. Some people are saying, look, this is desperate. Others are saying, finally, we said something. And that's the funny thing about the market, right? No matter what you do, and just in anything in life, no matter what you do, you're going to have those that support you and those that see it as a negative case. Now, personally, I don't see this as necessarily bullish. I really don't. I don't see this as NVIDIA dunking on Google. I also don't see this as bearish, right? I don't really see this as NVIDIA kind of being scared of Google. I think at the end of the day, the main thing here is Google is that big player, right? It's the king of AI. And if you're the king, or if you're some royalty, and if something happens that distinguishes your or threatens your throne, or kind of maybe puts a bad name to your throne, you as the king of the market needs to say something, even if it's as simple as congratulations, right? That's just how it is, right? It's just no matter if it's the best company, if it's the best whatever, you always have to respond because the market is always curious. Oh, why didn't they? They have to say something, in my opinion. And that's why NVIDIA has said what they did here for this, and they responded a few days ago to Michael Burry's kind of short-term thesis, because so many people are watching, and it's only fair, right? In their mind, it's only fair for them to respond. I think it's true. I mean, if I was I'm a content creator, right? If something iffy or weird happens, it's only natural for me to respond to it to make sure the right context is taken. So that's what I wanted to bring. A good friend of the channel, Amit, kind of also said the following. I think people are reading too much into Nvidia's responding to Michael Burry and now responding to what's going on with TPUs. So I agree with his sentiment. He's pretty much saying the same thing, right? This is a company that just likes to share the overall thoughts of what's happening. And I don't think it's necessarily a bullish or bearish sentiment. Now, I also find it pretty exciting or funny about Google. And for those that haven't watched my previous episode, I actually dropped one this morning. It's called Did Google and Nvidia or something like that? Or is Google the end for Nvidia? And it's the market has shifted completely, right? Year to date, at one point this year, Alphabet was going to be the one that loses the AI race and that loses everything in the AI market. That was probably less than 6 months ago. Now AI is going to destroy everybody, and it's going to destroy even Nvidia, the king of acceleration. Market sentiments, in my opinion, create opportunities. That's why I believe Nvidia might be an opportunity. And Beth Kindick responds really well. About 9 months ago, the market thought Google was toast because ChatGPT success was going to threaten search, where Google clearly owns the market. Now, the market has not only reversed its feelings on Google, but grown quite ambitious as just today, the market thinks Google is so strong it can take Nvidia on custom silicon, where Nvidia clearly owns the market with GPUs. Never mind that TPUs have been around for nearly a decade. Crazy how market sentiment works. I 100% agree. Now, the other thing is, one of the big things is Google is going to enter into this market and sell chips to other players, right? That's the story. And here, Jules Agents, which is your new autonomous coding agent by Google Labs, built for devs, open to feedback, posted, due to capacity constraint, we are temporarily serving Gemini 2.5 Pro for all users. We are working to restore Gemini 3 access as soon as possible. We apologize for the inconvenience. Now, you're telling me that Google, instead of keeping all these cheap TPUs for themselves, and they expect more demand growth in Gemini, they're actually going to sell them to other vendors like Meta. Wouldn't it make more sense if they're so cheap to run for them to just continuing to use it for internal use cases? Right. So that's the first thing. If they are so capacity constrained, are they really going to give it out to the rest of the market? The second thing is everybody's saying TPUs are cheap. Yes, TPUs are cheap for Google for their selected workload task. But when you sell it to somebody else, you're not going to sell it for the same price that you bought it for, right? You're going to sell it at some form of higher price to get margins. And then that margins, you have to include a lot of things, the possibility of getting returns or something breaking, the possibility of this and that. So you have to add the possibility of shipping, the possibility of if you get sued or whatever, right? So you have to add all these type of margins to be able to protect the business. Now, at what point does the market, like Meta, for example, go, now I'm actually paying this amount of price for the TPUs after they added their margins and after they added everything else? Is it worth it for me to go with this market that, yes, might be a little bit cheaper right now, but they're not as flexible as the GPUs? I understand the cloud use case. It makes perfect sense. But now if you're selling it independently to other companies' data center, they're going to have to increase their margins directly. And then they become another AI chip company. So then is it really, really, now you're no longer paying the Nvidia tax, but you're going to be paying the Google tax. And the market doesn't see it. They think because TPUs are cheap to make, it's easy. Nvidia GPUs are cheap to make for Nvidia. Google's TPUs are cheap to make for Google. They're not going to give it for that same price. So just another thought there. Now, what else do we have? We actually have a TPU co-design, research scientists at Google DeepMind, TPU co-design, say the following. This sell-off shows how clueless the market is about hardware and the demand. It's very vague. So I think everybody's kind of reading into it. The way I read it is mainly about hardware and the demand. There's too much supply constraint in the hardware space, right? You can't get enough GPUs, so you have to go to some other players to see if you can increase your compute. But then the hardware market is also one that you can't just infinitely make. So you can't go from a nearly 0% market share to even a 10%. AMD barely has done that, right? So it's important to understand your thesis and curve your enthusiasm. That's what I got from it. I would love to hear from others what he means by this. We also have some other, I'm not too familiar with this person, but a lot of views and people say Google TPUs have zero impact for AMD. I think this is completely false. I think some people always see when something's a threat to Nvidia, it's not a threat to AMD. It is, right? I'm not bearish on AMD. I'm actually very bullish on AMD with this sell-off as well. But Google's TPUs is that second player, is that alternative to Nvidia, which is what AMD is right now, is trying to be that alternative for Nvidia. People are going to stay with Nvidia. Then they're going to try to find your alternative. And if your alternative, obviously AMD has GPUs, so there's a whole different line there. But I wouldn't say that Google's TPUs have zero impact on AMD. I do believe the bigger risk right now is to AMD if you're looking for a certain selected player for the AI workload market. And I understand why AMD might have seen a bit more of a sell-off than some other players. Now, Jim Cramer also shared something. He said, please remember that actual vendors on Google TPU chips is Broadcom and Hock Tan, CEO board of Meta. The most likely winner here is Broadcom because that is who Meta would contract with. I don't think that's the truth, right? I think the angle is different. And I actually see someone else, I don't know if somebody mentioned it, but Google owns the chips here. So Broadcom just helps with the IP of it, but Google still owns the chips. They're going to be the ones that build it out, and they're the ones that are going to get that contract. I don't think Broadcom gets anything extra than the type of revenue share that they might get with stuff like this and with the fees that they collect, either being a licensing fee, engineering fee, or whatever. But I think Jim is wrong here. I don't think it's Broadcom. It's definitely going to be Google, the one that's winning in this space. They're the ones that are going to get the contract because they're the ones that have the ability to send those chips to be made, right? Because it's their chip. So just be careful, right? Just be careful out there. So those are my overall thoughts. Again, if you want to get some pretty cool charts, make sure to check out fiscal.ai/Jose for Black Friday sale, now 30% off. Now, the other thing is, if you want to join my community, focusing on the semiconductor market and AI market, join the inner circle right now. I also have a Black Friday sale. Annual subscription, 33% off, which is about $100 saving. Use code CYBER at checkout. Join the community. We have deep dives on semiconductor and AI stocks. We have monthly live Q&A sessions. We have detailed episode slides, and we have AI agents. So cool tech just in the overall community. So make sure to check it out. So peace out. Have a good day and see you all next time.